The trial of Derek Chauvin is closing up. They're giving their closing arguments today, and I gotta say, if I was on that jury, I would probably vote to acquit. Just based on all the evidence given that the state has not done their job of proving guilt in any way. I won't admit to or claim to have been watching every minute of the trial. I do have a job. I don't have time to be watching trial all day. But from what I have seen, they haven't proven anything. They haven't proven that Derek Chauvin intended to kill him and that his actions were the sole cause of his death. Just based on all the evidence provided, the prosecution they even kept changing their story. From at the beginning, it was that the kneeling on George Floyd's neck was what caused him to die, and then after cross-examining a lot of the prosecution's own witnesses, the defense attorney was able to basically get it out of their own witnesses that his knee was not on his neck for the full 9 minutes. It was moving from his back to his neck. Their own witnesses were saying that they didn't find any bruising on his neck or on his back when they did the autopsy. They also were talking about how much fentanyl and meth was in his system in his autopsy, and that was just the prosecution's own witnesses. They talked about how the crowd was unruly and it wasn't really helping the situation in any regard, and when the ambulance arrived, they had to load him up in the ambulance, drive down the street, and then start resuscitating him because the area wasn't very safe. The use of force experts that the prosecution brought on disagreed with each other. The supposed MMA fighter was calling it a blood choke when it clearly was not a blood choke. It wasn't cutting off blood to George Floyd's brain in any way. And they never proved what was the cause of death. And so, I mean, when in the closing arguments, I don't know if they're going on right now or later on today, but when those happen, all the defense attorney really has to do is provide doubt to the jury, because all they need to do is prove reasonable doubt. In this country, the prosecution's really, the courts are really stacked in favor of defense, because it's better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man go be put in jail. So it's set up that way on purpose. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Derek Chauvin, his actions killed George Floyd. And with the charges that he's been laid against him, I think murder 2 and murder 3 are completely out, and manslaughter might be the only one. But even then, you can't prove that the kneeling on his neck was what killed him. I forget who had this thought experiment, but they said basically, if you could have a choice between being kneeled on your neck for 9 minutes or take the amount of fentanyl that George Floyd took, which one would you choose? The answer is pretty clear. You'd choose the knee on the neck, because he had 3 times the amount that typically kills a person. So basically, based on all the evidence provided and the prosecution's witnesses and the defense witnesses, if you're a jury member, if I was a jury member, I would vote to acquit. Now, there's other things going on right now. This trial is happening in Minneapolis. There's riots going on. There's been riots going on all last year and this year, ever since George Floyd died, and there's no way that the jury is immune to that. I mean, one jury member even said that he had never heard of Black Lives Matter, which I find that extremely hard to believe, considering it was plastered all over corporate America's websites and all over, stadiums, sporting stadiums and things like that. There's no way that, I don't believe that for 1 second. but a lot of them have already expressed fear that they could be attacked, their houses could be burned down, their lives could be ruined if they vote a certain way. And based on the rhetoric that's coming out of a lot of Democrat politicians and Black Lives Matter activists, regardless of what the jury does, if they vote to convict him or if they vote to acquit him, there's going to be riots. There's going to be bloodshed, damage, and just recently, Maxine Waters, a Democratic, I believe she's a congresswoman, came out and said that she wants a guilty verdict. There has to be a guilty verdict, or else if there's not a guilty verdict, and she said in murder in the first degree, which isn't even what he's being charged with. So I guess the conclusion's already there, because he can't be convicted for something that he's not been charged with. So they're gonna riot. They're going to be burning down buildings. They're going to be shooting at people. They already shot at the National Guard. At what point does this become an insurrection? There's already the George Floyd Autonomous Zone, where they declared that they are not part of the surrounding government. They're not part of America. They're not part of Minnesota or Minneapolis. It's an autonomous zone. I don't know what to call that other than an insurrection. And with Maxine Waters' rhetoric, she said things like, we need to see more action. If we don't get a guilty verdict, then we need to stay out here and make our voices heard, and we need to do more. I'm not sure how you could do more than burning down buildings. I mean, beyond that, what more can you do? Is it going to start getting more violent? I mean, it definitely could get more violent. But I don't know how you get a fair trial in this political culture that we're in. There's no way this trial should have been done not in Minneapolis. It should have been done elsewhere with jury members that are not from the town. But if I could go back to Maxine Waters, Trump was impeached because of his speech that he made on January 6th, where he literally says, we are going to go peacefully make our voices heard. Peacefully. He said peacefully. And he was brought up on charges of inciting an insurrection, inciting a riot. His rhetoric does not even compare to what she just said. So she needs to be charged. She needs to be taken out of Congress. We need to see action on her. I mean, the Republicans can't just let things like this go. For too long, we've let them get away with things like this. I mean, for God's sakes, Kamala Harris solicited donations to bail rioters out. Joe Biden's staff did the same exact thing, to bail rioters out. So they riot, they get arrested, the district attorney just lets them go. No bail. Go out there and live to fight another day, riot again tomorrow. That's basically what's been happening. So, I mean, regardless of what happens, I mean, these jury members, they might be scared into convicting him. If they vote their conscience and they, in my opinion, if they look at the available facts that were given in this trial, if they stand on principle, they will acquit him. Either way, though, there's going to be riots. Either way, there's going to be violence. And if you're a police officer in Minneapolis, I don't know why you're still there, what you're doing. I mean, it's clear that they don't want you there. It's clear that the population, not everybody, but the majority, they vote for these things. They vote for defunding the police. So I can't imagine being a police officer in that environment. At a certain point, I mean, I think a lot of the police officers that are still there, because a lot have quit. A lot have taken early retirement. Like, record numbers have quit or retired. But the ones that are still there, they're either scabs, they're just not good police officers, probably have really low training, probably are not qualified for the job that they have now. I'm sure there are some good ones, and they probably have really noble intentions. They're probably thinking, despite the hatred, despite the lack of support from the community and politicians. They're probably thinking, someone needs to be out there protecting the innocent people. And that's true. Someone needs to be out there doing that. But at a certain point, you can't help people who don't want to be helped. And this whole situation is about policing in America, and I think the left and the right both agree that something's wrong with how it works in our country, how law enforcement works, the criminal justice system. I think we both agree that something's wrong. We just completely disagree on the solution. The Democrats and the left, they want to completely defund the police, abolish the police, or send out social workers. And the right doesn't want to do that. They think that, I think they have a much more nuanced and well-rounded opinion on what needs to be done. If you ask me, and maybe you shouldn't, but if you ask me, what I think needs to be done is we need to take a look at some of these laws. I mean, the war on drugs, we need to examine it. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. I tend to lean towards thinking that it's not a good thing. I think it empowers criminals, it empowers the cartels. And, I'd have to look at the statistics, but I would think that there's something that we can do to where this war on drugs isn't ruining people's lives like this, or causing these types of situations. I also think that as far as policing goes, they're asked to do so much, where we ask them to be, martial artists, we ask them to be health experts, we ask them to be social workers, we ask them to be mental health specialists. They have way too many responsibilities, and they don't get paid much. I mean, around where I live, they do get paid fairly well, but I live in a safe community. I don't think they're dealing with the type of things that they're dealing with in Minneapolis or some of these big cities. If you ask me, they should be paid a lot more. They should be, the requirements to become a police officer should be a lot higher. And as a culture, I mean, the right kind of already does this, but as a culture, we should be looking up to police officers as the heroes that they are. I mean, a lot of times when these things happen that make the news, and you hear about from the Democrats and people, leftists in general, saying that all cops are bad. Every situation, all these situations are systematic problems, and there's no solution other than just completely abolishing policing, or even incarceration. I've heard some saying that we can't incarcerate people anymore. I'm not sure how that's going to work in any way, but these people need to look at videos on 9/11. Everybody was running away from the towers, was running away from these buildings that were on fire, except for police officers and firemen. They were running towards the danger. We need that. These people are heroes. We need more of that. Anyway, my dog's barking, so I'm going to wrap this up. But that's kind of the situation, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think based on the evidence provided in the trial, Derek Chauvin should be acquitted, but these outside influences and the threats on these jurors' lives and livelihoods might convince them to vote otherwise. So I'll leave it there. Bye.